Parenting for You Guided Tour. How does your child learn? Today we're going to talk about sensory play. Our children engage in sensory play for years and it's very necessary to their learning, but what is sensory play? Sensory play is defined as activities that engage your child and stimulate either one or a combination of the five senses. Let's look at those five senses. First we have sight, probably one of the most used things. Hearing. Third, we have touch, something that children use a lot of, and when they're very, very young and newborns, touch is very significant to their learning. Taste, okay, something that's pleasurable, but also something where they get a lot of information into their world. And last is smell. So when we put all those things together, as children play, they are gaining experience from each and information from each one of these five senses. So it's really important to have balanced activities so that all of the five senses are used. Childhood is a messy business right from the beginning. Playing with sensory materials is one of the best ways for young children to learn about the world and develop their skills. Sensory materials are often a favourite of very young children. Sand, water, Play-Doh, shaving cream and cooking projects all help children to understand their environment through touch, smell and tasting. Also using sight. These activities also provide opportunities for language development, understanding spatial relationships and other basic maths concepts such as one-to-one correspondence, small group activities, developing social skills and fine motor development. These types of activities engage your child in activities where there is no right or wrong way to use the open-ended materials. Thus, they offer children a sense of success time after time. How fantastic in a world where they are often hearing, "Don't do that," or "I told you not to do that," or "Don't do it that way, do it this way." Children also learn through moving. Their bodies take in information from all senses and they process this information by doing. An educational psychologist by the name of Jean Piaget was one of the most influential researchers in the area of developmental psychology during the 20th century. We still see many curricula based on his work. He was mainly interested in the biological influences on how we come to know things. Piaget was fascinated with how humans learn to adapt to their environment. He hypothesized that infants are born with certain pre-programmed schemes operating at birth that he called reflexes. In other animals, these reflexes control behavior right throughout their life, but in human beings, as the infants use these reflexes to adapt to their environment, these reflexes are quickly replaced with what he called constructed schemes. The 4 stages of development, of cognitive development that he came up with, he identified 4 stages as being: the first one, the sensory motor stage of infancy; the pre-operational stage, which was toddler and early childhood; the concrete operational stage, which was elementary and early adolescence; and the formal operational stage, which is adolescence through adulthood. Let's have a look at the sensory motor stage, infancy. The sensory motor stage is the first of the 4 stages Piaget uses to define cognitive development. He designated the first 2 years of life to this stage, from birth to 24 months. During this period, infants are busy discovering relationships between their bodies and the environment. Researchers have discovered that infants have relatively well-developed sensory abilities. The child relies on seeing, touching, sucking, feeling and using their senses to learn things about themselves and the environment. Through being allowed to explore as many different experiences as possible, infants develop the concept of separate selves. That is, the infant realizes that the external world is not an extension of themselves. And they start to realize that an object can be moved by their hand or pushed by their feet. During this stage, it makes sense that our child's incoming information is primarily through the senses. At first, they can't even understand language, so information must come through in many forms. even when they can understand language and are starting to speak it themselves, it's still imperative that the learning take place through movement. Let's take a look at a video segment now and have a look at what's actually happening in regards to sensory stimulus.
Lolly, lolly, hey lolly, lolly, oh. Hey lolly, 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 hey lolly, lolly, oh.
Let's have a look at the information that's actually being processed through the senses as this activity is happening. It's only a short activity, but it really is, the child really has to process a lot of information. Okay, first we have sight. As the trajectory is changing, as they're going up and down, have a look at what's happening to their sight. You can go back and have a look at it if you like. They see the walls around them, next thing they see the ground, then they're back up again. So their vision has to adjust constantly to make things not blurry. They have to make sure that the information coming in is being processed so fast that everything's not just a blur. Now, if you're doing this with a child and they're crying, stop, because their sight may not be advanced enough to be having things in focus. And you can imagine if you're being rocked like that and everything's out of focus, how dizzy you would get very quickly. So sometimes if the sight isn't well enough developed and you're doing an activity like that, a child will really cry and be uncomfortable because of that. Have a look at hearing. There's music going on here, so they're moving to the music. Touch, they can feel mum's hands, so they have a touch sensation with their fingers. Also, as they go through the air, they would be feeling the air moving through the air. They'd be able to feel that with their skin. The vestibular system. Now, the vestibular system is something that we will go into great detail in our mentoring program. It is essential to every child's development, and not many people know a lot about it. I'm always amazed that early childhood professionals don't know a lot about the vestibular system when it's such an integral part of learning. The vestibular system is a system that governs a lot of things. Balance is one of the primary things, but it also balances a lot of things like sight and touch and a lot of other things. But in this case, we're stimulating the vestibular system in regards to balance. So as the child is going up and down, the fluid in the middle ear canals is being moved, and that child has to rebalance itself in space, so once again it doesn't get dizzy. Now, the vestibular system, like all systems and all skills, develop independently and at different stages. So if you have a child that you are rocking, or you have a child that you're moving too quickly through the air and their vestibular system can't catch up with them, they will become extremely uncomfortable. They'll become very dizzy and they will cry. So if your child, every time you do some sort of movement activity like this, is crying, then the vestibular system is immature. And we will certainly go through things in the mentoring program of how you can help your child if you have a child with that problem. A sense of rhythm. Here we are rocking in time to the music. Now, sense of internalized rhythm later helps children cut with scissors. So internal rhythm is something that's imperative. We use it for language. We use rhythm for walking. Who here can walk and talk without even thinking about it? That's a most complex set of rhythmic advances and rhythmical events happening together, and we don't even think about it. It's at a subconscious level. So sense of rhythm underlies an awful lot of everyday activities.